It wasn't a crash. It wasn't the shattering of glass or the splintering of wood that you typically associate with a break-in. Those are the sounds of desperation, of a junkie looking for a quick score or a teenager looking for a thrill. No, the sound that woke me up at 10:14 a.m. on a Tuesday was much more dangerous. It was the sound of entitlement. It was a slow, deliberate beep, beep, beep from the electronic keypad on my detached garage, followed by the heavy hydraulic hiss of the magnetic lock disengaging, a sound that shouldn't have been possible. That keypad used military-grade encryption. Only 2 people on Earth had the code, me and the contractor who built the structure, who currently lives in Guam. I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot, holding a mug of black coffee that had just finished brewing. The house was silent, the kind of silence you pay a premium for in a neighborhood like Golden Oaks. It's the kind of neighborhood where the grass is measured with a ruler and the trash cans are hidden like shameful secrets behind cedar fences. I moved here for that silence. After 20 years in a job that required me to hunt down the loudest, messiest criminals on the planet, I just wanted boring. I wanted invisible. But as the sound of my garage door creaking open echoed through the monitor on my kitchen counter, I realized that invisible was no longer an option. I set the coffee mug down on the granite counter. I didn't run. I didn't panic. Panic is for amateurs. Panic is for people who don't have a plan. Instead, I leaned over the counter and tapped the screen of my security monitor, expanding the camera feed from Garage Interior, Zone 4. And there she was, Patricia, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, a woman who wore floral blouses like body armor and wielded her clipboard like a sword. She was standing inside my private, soundproofed, windowless workshop. She was looking around with a mixture of disgust and predatory excitement. She adjusted her oversized sunglasses, even though she was inside, and pulled a digital camera from her purse. She thought she had won. She thought she had finally caught me in the act. She thought she had found the illegal renovation, the unpermitted dwelling, or the commercial business she was convinced I was running. She thought she was about to ruin my life. I watched her on the screen, a cold, humorless smile touching my lips. Because what Patricia didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know because she never bothered to ask, was that she hadn't just broken into a carpenter shed. She had unlawfully entered a secure facility belonging to a high-level investigator for the Federal Audit Bureau. She was looking for a code violation. I was looking at a felony. We are about to watch Patricia destroy her entire life in 4K resolution. And trust me, the justice that is coming is sweeter than you can imagine. But before I lock the door on her, I want to know, where are you watching this story from? Do you have a Patricia in your neighborhood who thinks she owns the place? Pause the video and let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Now, let's see what happens when a Karen breaks into a federal agent's home.
To understand why Patricia was standing in my workshop that Tuesday, risking a prison sentence to take photos of my tool bench, you have to understand the war that led us here. It didn't start with the garage. It started with a truck. I moved into Golden Oaks 6 months ago. I drove a Ford F-250. It's stock, black, clean. It's my daily driver. But to Patricia, it was a commercial assault vehicle. 3 days after I moved in, I was unpacking boxes in the driveway. I felt a presence behind me. You know that feeling? The hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's a primal instinct, the feeling of being watched by a predator. I turned around. A white golf cart was idling silently at the end of my driveway. Sitting in it was a woman who looked like she had just smelled something sour. "That vehicle," she said. No hello. No welcome to the neighborhood, just an accusation. "Good morning to you too," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I'm Jack." She didn't take the bait. She pointed a manicured finger at my truck. "That vehicle exceeds the weight limit to aesthetic harmony. Section 4, paragraph B. No commercial or heavy-duty vehicles visible from the street overnight." "It's not a commercial vehicle," I said calmly. "It's my personal truck. And it's 2 p.m., not overnight." "It implies labor," she sniffed. This is a leisure community, Jack. We don't want to see work." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, turning back to my boxes. "I'm Patricia," she called out to my back, "HOA president, and I'll be watching you." That was the declaration of war. Over the next 4 months, Patricia made it her full-time job to monitor my existence. I was a puzzle she couldn't solve, and that drove her insane. She needed to know who I was. Was I a mechanic, a contractor, a drug dealer? I kept my blinds closed. I never went to the potlucks. I paid my dues electronically. I was a ghost. So she started probing. She sent me 17 violation letters in 12 weeks. Violation 1, trash can visible at 6:01 p.m. The limit was 6 p.m. Violation 2, improper mulching. Apparently my mulch was too dark. Violation 3, suspicious noise. I dropped a hammer in my garage once. She was trying to break me. She was used to people who would just pay the fines to make her go away. She was used to fear. But she made a critical error in her profiling. She assumed I was stubborn. I'm not stubborn. I'm meticulous. Every letter she sent, I scanned and archived. Every time she drove by my house slowly, I logged the time and date in a spreadsheet. I dug into the county records. I pulled the HOA's financial filings. I started building a case file on her. If she wanted to play by the rules, I was going to make sure we played by all of them. Then, I built the workshop. I applied for the permits legally. I got county approval. I even submitted the plans to the architectural committee, which I discovered was just Patricia and her husband, Bob. They denied it, of course. Does not fit the aesthetic character. I appealed. I cited the provision that allowed for accessory structures within the footprint of the original lot lines. I threatened a lawsuit based on selective enforcement, citing 3 other neighbors who had sheds. She folded. She had to. Her lawyer told her she would lose. But the victory wasn't sweet for her. It was humiliation. I built the workshop. I made it beautiful, soundproof, secure, and I put a high-grade electronic keypad on the door. For weeks, I saw her slowing down in front of my house. She was dying to know what was inside. And today, her curiosity had finally outweighed her survival instinct.
Let's go back to the monitor. Patricia was currently standing in the center of the workshop. My workshop isn't a typical garage. It's a hobby space, yes, but it's organized with military precision. One wall is lined with restored vintage electronics, old radios, oscilloscopes. The other wall has my woodworking tools. In the center, there's a large assembly table. But the back corner, that's what she was interested in. In the back corner, I had a row of heavy metal filing cabinets, locked, and next to them a stack of boxes labeled GOV, Archive, Do Not Touch. Patricia was snapping photos of everything. She took a picture of the table saws. She took a picture of the ventilation system. She was whispering into a voice recorder she held in her other hand. Subject has industrial-grade ventilation, she narrated to herself. Clear evidence of commercial manufacturing, possible toxic fumes, violation of Section 8, Paragraph C. She walked over to the boxes. She nudged one with her foot. I decided it was time to make my presence known, but not in person. I have a 2-way audio system installed in the workshop. High fidelity. I pressed the microphone button on my kitchen counter. "Smile, Patricia," I said. On the screen, the reaction was visceral. She jumped about 3 inches in the air. She spun around, clutching her chest, her eyes darting wildly around the empty room. "Who's there?" she shrieked. "Look up," I said, my voice calm, amplified by the speakers. "To your left, the black dome." She looked up at the camera. Her face was pale, but then, almost instantly, the flush of indignation returned. The fear vanished, replaced by the arrogance of a woman who has never been told no. She straightened her blazer. She pointed a shaking finger at the lens. "You startled me," she yelled. This is highly inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I asked. "Patricia, you bypassed a military-grade lock. You are trespassing on private property. How did you get in?" "I am not trespassing," she shouted, her voice echoing in the workshop. "I am the president of the HOA. Under the Emergency Access Covenant, I have the right to inspect any property where there is a suspected safety hazard or unpermitted commercial activity." "Emergency access," I repeated. "Do you see a fire, Patricia? Do you see a flood? Do you see someone bleeding?" "I see industrial equipment," she gestured to my table saw. "I have received anonymous complaints about noise and fumes. I am documenting the violation." "You received no complaints because the walls are R30 soundproof insulation. I could fire a cannon in there and the neighbors wouldn't hear it, and you know that." She marched toward the door. "I've seen enough. You'll be receiving a cease and desist order for this factory and a fine for the unauthorized lock." She reached for the door handle. This was the moment. The trap wasn't just physical, it was psychological. "Patricia," I said. She paused, hand on the lever. "What?" "Try the door." She pushed the lever down. It didn't move. She shoved the door. It held firm. I had engaged the magnetic locks remotely the moment she stepped inside. That door was now capable of withstanding a battering ram. She rattled it. Then she rattled it harder. "Open this door. It's stuck." "It's not stuck. It's locked." She turned back to the camera, her face twisting into a scowl. "Open it, now, or I'm calling the police." "Please, be my guest. Call them. In fact, put it on speaker. I'd love to hear how you explain this to the dispatcher." We have her trapped. The police are the next step. If you are enjoying the suspense so far, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more Karens face justice, subscribe right now. You don't want to miss the fallout of this one.
She hesitated. She knew. Deep down in the reptilian part of her brain, she knew she was in the wrong. Calling the police would mean admitting she was inside. "I don't have time for games, Jack," she yelled. "I have a meeting at 4. Let me out." "No," I said. The silence that followed was heavy. "What do you mean, no?" she whispered. "I mean, I'm not opening the door, Patricia. You broke into a secure facility. For all I know, you're a corporate spy, or a thief, or a vandal. I can't just let a potential criminal walk away." "I am the HOA president," she screamed, slamming her hand against the metal door. "That's a club title," I said, "not a law enforcement badge. You have exactly 8 minutes to get comfortable. I've already contacted the sheriff's department. They're on their way." I hadn't called them yet, but I was about to. I picked up my cell phone. I didn't dial 911. I dialed the direct line for the county sheriff's dispatch. Being in the business for 20 years means you have certain numbers saved. "Dispatch, this is Jack Reynolds at 404 Golden Oaks Drive," I said calmly. "Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds. I have a burglary in progress. I've detained the intruder inside my detached structure. The perimeter is secure." "Are you in danger, sir?" "No, the intruder is contained, but she is becoming agitated." "We have a unit in the area. Deputy Miller is 5 minutes out. Can you give a description of the intruder?" "Female, mid-50s, wearing..." Let's see. I glanced at the monitor. Patricia was currently kicking the door. Wearing a floral print blouse and holding a clipboard, she claims to be the HOA president. The dispatcher paused. "Is this Patricia..." "Last name." I raised an eyebrow. "You know her?" "We have a file," the dispatcher sighed. "Sit tight, Mr. Reynolds. Do not engage. Miller is rolling up now." I hung up. On the screen, Patricia was beginning to lose her composure. The bravado was cracking. She took out her phone. She was trying to call someone, probably her husband Bob. I turned the microphone back on. "Patricia, stop kicking the door. You're scuffing the finish. That's billable damage." She spun around. "My husband is on his way. He's going to break this door down." "If Bob touches that door," I said, "I'll add vandalism to the trespassing charges. And Patricia, you should look at the box next to you." She looked at the box labeled gov.archive. "What about it?" she snapped. "That box contains federal audit files regarding housing development fraud." I lied. Well, it was a half-lie. The files were old training manuals, but she didn't know that. "You are currently standing in a room containing sensitive government documents.
You just escalated this from a simple B&E to a potential federal incident." I watched the color drain from her face. It was like watching a tide go out. I didn't touch anything," she stammered. "The camera says otherwise. You moved the box with your foot. You photographed the room. That's espionage, technically." I'm just the HOA president," she squeaked. "Not for long," I muttered. Then I saw the blue lights flashing through the front window of my house. The cavalry had arrived.
I walked out my front door to meet the deputy. Deputy Miller was a big guy. Calm demeanor, looked like he'd seen it all. He was leaning against his cruiser, looking at my driveway. "Mr. Reynolds?" he asked. "That's me." "Badge number?" I asked out of habit. He gave it to me. "Dispatcher said you have Patricia trapped in a shed?" "It's a workshop," I corrected. "And yes, she bypassed the lock." Miller sighed and rubbed his temples. "Sir, I'm going to be honest. We get calls about this lady once a week. Usually she's the one calling us because someone's dog is barking too happily. This is a new one." "She's inside. The door is mag-locked. I can release it from my phone." "Please do." We walked around the side of the house to the workshop. A small crowd had gathered. The neighbors. This is the beauty of the suburbs. The moment a police car shows up, the curtains twitch. People were standing on their porches. Some were pretending to water their lawns. I saw Mrs. Higgins from next door. She was holding a cup of tea, watching with undisguised glee. Patricia had fined Mrs. Higgins $200 last month for having a non-compliant garden gnome. "Ready?" I asked Miller. "Ready." I tapped the app on my phone. The magnetic lock disengaged with a loud thunk. I pulled the heavy steel door open. Patricia stumbled out. She looked disheveled. Her hair was frizzy, her sunglasses were crooked, and she was clutching her clipboard like a shield. When she saw the deputy, her eyes lit up. She instantly switched modes. The victim. "Officer! Thank God! Arrest him! Arrest him right now! He held me hostage! He kidnapped me!" Deputy Miller didn't reach for his cuffs. He just crossed his arms. "Ma'am, calm down." "Calm down? I was locked in a dark room. I was threatened. This man is a psychopath." "The room has motion-activated LED lighting, Patricia, and it's climate-controlled to 72 degrees. "He trapped me!" she shrieked. Deputy Miller stepped forward. "Ma'am, why were you in the gentleman's garage?" "It's an illegal structure," she shouted. "I was conducting an inspection. I have the authority under the bylaws." Miller looked at me. "Did you give her permission to enter?" "No. The door was locked, deadbolted." Miller looked back at Patricia. "Ma'am, did you break into the building?" I used the master key," she said. "The HOA has a master key for emergency access." "There is no emergency," Miller said, his voice hardening. "Entering a locked residence without permission is burglary, unlawful entry." "I am the president," she stomped her foot. "I am the law in this neighborhood." "No, ma'am," Miller dropped his voice an octave. "I am the law. And right now, you're a suspect." The neighbors gasped. I actually heard it, a collective gasp from 3 different lawns. Patricia looked like she had been slapped. "Suspect? You can't be serious. I want to speak to your supervisor." "You can speak to him at the station," Miller said. He reached for his belt. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." "What?" Patricia froze. "You can't arrest me. My husband is a lawyer." "Turn around, ma'am." "Wait," I said. I stepped forward. Patricia looked at me with venom in her eyes. "You'll regret this. I'll sue you. I'll ruin you. You'll never work in this town again." I smiled, a cold, flat smile. "Patricia," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "I don't work in this town. I worked for the Federal Audit Bureau for 20 years, Organized Crime Division." I pulled my retired credentials from my back pocket and flipped them open. The silver badge caught the sunlight. "And by the way," I continued, "using HOA funds to buy a master key set to break into homes? That's embezzlement.
I'll be auditing the HOA books starting tomorrow." She stopped breathing. Her knees actually buckled. Miller had to hold her up. She knew. In that moment, she realized she hadn't just poked a bear. She had walked into a wood chipper. The clicking of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the cul-de-sac.
Patricia was booked and released on bail 4 hours later, but the damage was done. The mugshot wasn't public yet, but the rumor mill was faster than the internet. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I walked to the HOA management office. I didn't bring a weapon. I brought a box of donuts in a formal request for document production. According to the state law I knew very well, any homeowner has the right to inspect the financial records of the association within 5 business days of a request. The property manager, a nervous young guy named Dave, tried to stall. "Patricia usually handles these requests," he stammered, "and she's unavailable." "I know she's unavailable, Dave. She's meeting with her criminal defense attorney," I said. "I want the ledgers, the bank statements, and the receipts for the landscaping budget for the last 3 years." Dave handed them over. I spent the next 48 hours doing what I do best. I followed the money. It wasn't hard to find. Amateurs always leave trails. Patricia and Bob had been using the HOA reserve fund as their personal piggy bank. $5,000 for office supplies. It was a new MacBook Pro and an iPhone billed to the HOA. $12,000 for emergency landscaping, paid to a company registered to Bob's brother, and the work was never done. $2,500 for security consultation. That was the master key set in surveillance equipment they used to spy on neighbors. It totaled over $65,000 in 3 years. I didn't keep this information to myself. I didn't just give it to the police. I called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Usually, 5 people show up to these meetings. Tonight, it was standing room only. Everyone knew something was happening. Patricia was there. She was out on bail. She sat at the head table, wearing a neck brace, I have no idea why, maybe for sympathy, and dark sunglasses. She looked defiant. She banged the gavel. "Order! Order! We have a lot to get through. First item, the aggressive behavior of certain new residents." I stood up. "Sit down, Jack," she barked. "You are not recognized." "I have a point of order," I said, my voice projecting clearly. "You are out of order. Motion to remove the president effectively immediately pending a criminal investigation," I said. The room went silent. "Seconded," yelled Mrs. Higgins from the back row. "You can't do that." Patricia stood up. "This is a coup." "No, Patricia," I said, walking toward the front. I was holding a thick folder. "This is an audit." I tossed the folder onto the table in front of her. It landed with a heavy thud. "That contains copies of the checks you wrote to your brother-in-law. It contains the receipts for your personal electronics, and it contains a sworn affidavit from the locksmith who sold you the burglary tools using HOA funds." Patricia stared at the folder. She didn't open it. Her hands were shaking so hard the gavel clattered onto the table. "These are lies," she whispered. "The police don't think so," I said. "I submitted the evidence to the district attorney this morning. They're adding fraud and embezzlement to your trespassing charges." The room erupted. It was chaos. People were shouting, demanding answers. Bob, who was sitting next to her, looked like he was about to vomit. He stood up and tried to sneak out the side door, but 3 burly dads blocked his path. Patricia looked at the crowd. She looked at me. "I did everything for this community," she screamed, tears streaming down her face, the ugly, desperate tears of a narcissist who got caught. "I kept property values up. I kept the trash out." "You are the trash, Patricia," Mrs. Higgins shouted. The vote was unanimous, 142 to 0. Patricia was removed from the board. 5 minutes later, the meeting was adjourned, and 2 officers, who had been waiting in the lobby,
entered the room to have a chat with Patricia and Bob about the missing money. It's been 3 months since the incident. Patricia pleaded guilty. She's serving 18 months of house arrest at her sister's house in another state. They had to sell their house to pay back the funds. The new HOA president is a guy named Steve. He wears flip-flops to the meetings. My mailbox is still black, and my workshop? It's still secure. Patricia wanted to be the queen. She wanted to rule through fear. She forgot the most important rule of power. Never pick a fight with a man who buys ink by the barrel and surveillance cameras by the dozen. And that is how you legally destroy a Karen. It wasn't fast, but it was thorough. If you enjoyed this story of malicious compliance and justice, please subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more stories coming where the little guy wins. And click that like button if you think Patricia got exactly what she deserved. Thanks for watching Keys in Chaos, and remember, lock your doors and keep your receipts.